I'm here today with Dr. Betty Martin, and Betty is the author of The Art of Receiving and Giving, The Wheel of Consent. She has literally spent decades exploring the nuances of language as it relates to touch and intimacy. And today we have the pleasure of exploring how this nuance impacts sexual desire. Dr. Martin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. My favorite topic, just about. One of my favorite topics.
Fantastic. Mine too. So, as I mentioned before we began, this entire series is about sexual desire. And as I mentioned, I decided to create it because I hear so many women say, I want to want sex. And as we explore that further in my office, what begins to emerge is that they don't seem to enjoy the sex that they're having when they have it.
Sure.
And so there's something that you mention early in your book that I'd love to hear more about. You mentioned this moment that you discovered that your sexuality was yours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think that so many of the women
hmm
who, experience quote unquote diminished libido don't relate to their sexuality as theirs. So I'm wondering
I
if you'd
think
be
that's
willing,
largely true.
can you share more about that discovery and what it allowed for in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. I was in my mid 40s after a divorce, and I was reasonably functionally sexual, I didn't have any major problems that I was aware of. And I went to a workshop. This was with the Body Electric School for women on exploring their sexuality. And the Body Electric School is highly recommended. Check them out. And this particular workshop involved some exchanges of touch between the women. There was on a massage table doing um, a full body touch depending on what you wanted. And so it was not about how to be in a couple, how to communicate, how to all the lovey-dovey stuff. It wasn't about that. It was about what is my body capable of experiencing? That's a very different question. And so, uh, um, the women helping me, I was on the massage table and they were stroking me. It wasn't about the connection. It was about, okay, what is happening inside of me? What's happening in my body? And um, one thing that, one thing that happens in that kind of situation is because you're not focused on the other person, because it's not a romantic thing and all that stuff. It's just me and my skin. What is happening? And so, because it was that agreement and that setup, it allowed me to bring all my attention to my own skin. And that was life changing. And one of the things that came out of it, one of the things that was kind of funny was I sat up and I'm just this is blissful state, and oh my gosh, I sat up and I looked at the woman who was serving me and I said, I don't have to pick up your socks, do I? She said, no, you don't. I just went, yay, which was for me kind of a shorthand for we're not in relationship, but I don't have to take care of you. So that was kind of funny. But what I realized at the end of that workshop, it was 2 or 3 days, was that my sexuality belonged to me, didn't belong to anybody else. And the aha was so vivid that it made me wonder, well, who else did I think it belonged to all these years? I was 45 years old, you know. Who did I think it was? And I realized that growing up in the 50s and 60s, in straight white middle class America, I thought that my experience of my own sexuality was always in response to somebody else's, a man generally, that what he thought was sexy, then I was supposed to think was sexy, and what he thought was fun, I was supposed to think was fun, and what he thought I was supposed to want or what he wanted was what I was supposed to want, and his pleasure was the point of the whole thing. And I think that's pretty common. I've come to see that that's pretty common. I don't think it was just me. And so claiming it, realizing, oh, wait a minute, I am a sexual being, period. Has nothing to do with anybody else. I might choose to bring that out and play with somebody else, hopefully. I mean, what most people like to do at some point. And I get to choose if and who and when and how I want to play with that, with my own sexuality and see where the dance is and what the play is. But it belongs to me. I'm in charge of it, and it's mine, baby. And that was a big change for me. I spent a number of years after that um, taking other workshops of theirs and meeting with other friends who'd also taken the workshops and doing some experimenting and things, and just diving into what happens in me, what happens in my body when I'm in aroused states, when I'm in this state, when I'm moving, when I'm dancing, when I'm crying, when I'm turned on. What happens in here? What's going on in here? And that became really kind of a spiritual path for a number of years for me. And it led to a change in career because I wanted to, after a certain point, I wanted to offer that to other people. Um, but yeah, the aha was so vivid. It just made me wonder, well, what what did I think all those past years, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And so it's I'm like already deviating from my intended trajectory, but I feel like I need to know, was it harder to maintain that sense of this is for me in the context of relationship,
Oh,
or
sure.
once you knew it, did you
Yeah.
know?
Well, once you know it, you know it. And this is why having some kind of a practice helps. So during those years, I had a practice group with these other women who'd taken that workshop and other ones. And so we would get together on the weekends and we'd do massage exchanges and stuff like that. So it was a chance to practice. It was a chance to put my body back in the place again where I realized it was about me. I was making my choices about me. It wasn't about lovey-dovey connecting stuff. It was just, okay, let's experiment together and see what we find. And so having a practice like that is super important because your body needs to experience it multiple times. You don't just have an aha and expect your life to change, you know.
Mhm.
And at the same time, um, I had a few relationships with men, and it wasn't as easy in those relationships as it was in the practice, sure, because uh, all the old habits just come back.
Yes.
And also, there's a big difference between when we were doing those our practices, we were taking turns. So it's my turn on the massage table, you're serving me, it's all about me. And when it's your turn on the massage table, it's all about you. It's not about me, it's about you. And so by taking turns, it allows you to focus on yourself in a way that if you're just making out and rolling around, you don't really want to totally focus on you because you're this person that you like that you're playing with. So it's a very different dynamic when I'm going into play and rolling around and making out, I'm not just there for me. I'm there to see what kind of magic is happening between us. So I am paying attention to you.
This is
Um,
something you
yeah.
highlight with the wheel, which of course we're going to get into. But it's like, I think one of the things that you talk about is a container for practice
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
everything else,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
the importance of knowing when you're practicing all
Yeah.
of the things that we'll spend a lot of time talking about today,
Yeah.
and when you're in a space of sort of creative or spontaneous flow. And
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that where that emerged?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had already learned to take turns because I've been peer counseling for 40 years before that. So I knew how to take turns. And so the taking turns part came very easily for me. But it doesn't for a lot of people. A lot of people, what I learned when I started practicing and seeing clients was that a lot of people are kind of afraid to take turns, and understandably so. Because when it's your turn to receive the gifts of the other person's attention, it's vulnerable and it's going to bring up all your stuff. So it's pretty dependable that it'll bring up your stuff. So, there's a reason why people sometimes have trouble taking turns. But um, yeah, it's a very different dynamic than just playing, rolling around. Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you for that.
yeah.
Before we get into the wheel and giving and receiving, there's a there's a section of your book that I pulled up because I it just seems to me like we almost have to enter the wheel from the back door. And I'm hoping where I'd love to go next is the definition of sex.
Hmm.
So you say here in the book, when you say the word sex, chances are you have a movie that runs in your head about how it's supposed to progress from A to B to C. And chances are that it includes some orifice or other. And I'd like to invite you to throw that out so that you can enlarge your idea of what sex actually is. I'm going to leave it from there to you to
Yeah,
help us
yeah.
expand the definition.
God, that's so important. And our messages around what is sex are so narrow and so, yeah, it's not very inspiring. Um, but yeah, I have, this is not a legal definition by any means. There are needs for legal definition. This is not it. I think of sex as um, the presence of your own arousal, your own turn on, and the choice to act on it. And if it involves someone else, which it doesn't always, but if it involves someone else, then they are also acting on their desire and interest. Um, I think a saying they're watching a hot guy cross the street and getting turned on is not sex because they're not involved. Only you are.
Yes.
Um,
You also
and
mentioned that if the other person's not able to give consent,
yes, that's right. That's
that's
not
that.
sex. That's assault. Yeah. So, yeah, this question came up when we were in our exploring days, those few years that we were experimenting, and we would often say, "Is this sex?" Like we were massaging each other, full body, and it was like, and get really turned on and all kinds of stuff. And wait a minute, is this sex? I don't think so. What is sex anyway? You know? And if you think of sex as something goes in some orifice, and that's the only kind, if that's the only kind of sex that counts, then you're going to think that if you're not getting that thing in that orifice, then it doesn't count as sex. And that's a real problem because then you think, well, I have to do the orifice thing or I don't have, or what, I have nothing, you know. And I think that's where a lot of people, especially women, get caught up in thinking, well, I need more libido because I'm supposed to want that thing going in me. And if I don't, then there's something wrong with me because that's what sex is. And if I don't want that kind of sex, then I don't want any sex. And that's a sad loss because there's lots of sexy things that you can do that don't involve intercourse. Lots of things. And some will may be more satisfying in the end than intercourse at that particular time. So I think, yeah. So what one thing that I learned from that, actually I learned from somebody else, I forget, was that the need the need for sex that we have, the biological need for sex, is not actually about sex. It's not actually about intercourse. The need is actually sexual expression. So our need is not for a sexual activity. You can go your whole life without activity XYZ and it ain't gonna hurt you. But the actual need is for sexual expression, which is just to say being the sexual being that you are instead of trying to be the sexual being that someone else thinks you should be. So your sexual expression may be um, kinky and wild and fun and carefree, and somebody else's sexual expression may be, I only like to do it this way with this kind of person, or someone else's sexual expression may be, I don't like to do it at all, and someone else's sexual expression may be, I got to have the roses, and someone else's sexual expression is going to be totally different. So what counts is that you get to be who you are as a sexual being and not who someone else thinks you should be. And that, in my experience, takes a little bit of experimenting. Um, I didn't figure that out until I was in my late 40s, and did some serious experimenting. So I, so yeah, it takes some experimenting. And just to note that it's not all about you got to get the thing stuck in there. Like that is not the point. That's not the point. Yeah.
Yes. Great. Thank you. And what a
Yeah.
great backdrop for then talking about consent, giving, and receiving, right? So, something that you do just an amazing job of in the book, and hopefully we can scratch the surface of here, is distinguishing doing
Mm-hmm.
from giving and receiving and why
Yeah.
that's so important. So,
Yeah.
what I'm actually just going to ask you to do is, as you want to put them together, right? If you could give us a sense of what is consent, right? Because again, you have a different definition than what we might
Mm-hmm.
automatically think.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is giving? What is receiving? How do these things come together to kind of create the quadrants?
Mm-hmm.
And, as you see fit, that's sort of like give us a primer on the wheel.
Okay. Let's see. We have about 3 days, do we?
I know. And, the funny thing is like there are to the best of our ability, I'd almost love to keep this part brief because where I really want your thoughts, like where I hope we can take a deeper dive,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is in why we talk ourselves into what we don't want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's really the more interesting.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can be brief with this
Okay.
first
Yeah.
part. And
So
then
so let me
also,
try to
Betty,
be,
limits.
yeah,
Why are
okay.
limits expansive? So those are our
Oh,
two big
yeah,
topics.
okay. Okay, let's see if we can just cover the wheel just very quickly here. The wheel of consent is a practice that grew out of really a little practice, a game called the 3 minute game. And in the 3 minute game, two people, two questions. You take turns asking those two questions. And the questions are, what do you want me to do to you for 3 minutes? And what do you want to do to me for 3 minutes? If you take turns asking those questions, you'll realize pretty quickly that creates 4 rounds that you're going to do. So either I'm doing to you what I want, or I'm doing to you what you want. And you'll notice that those are very different. They're very different dynamics. And then you're doing to me what I want, or you're doing to me what you want. So the wheel just takes those four dynamics and draws them in a matrix like this and says, okay, in each of those four rounds, I was either doing or I was being done to. In two of them, I was doing, two of them I was done to. And in two of those rounds, it was for me. In two of those rounds, it was for you, and they overlap like this. So you have those four quadrants, and you can see it on the wheel and you can link to it. Um, I do what you want, I do what I want, you do what you want, or you do what I want. And so that's the four quadrants. It's really simple. It's who's doing and who it's for, taking those apart. And you'll notice that also you're taking turns. So it's really a chance to, when it's my turn, it's really my turn. I get to ask for what I want. Maybe I want you to scratch my head. Maybe I want you to rub my back. Maybe I want to run my hand up your back. Maybe I want to spank you. Maybe I want to feel up your feet. It's going to be different things. So that's the 3-minute game in the Wheel of Consent. It took me a while to realize that it works best as a practice, meaning that when you can sort of separate it out from your daily life and, play this practice for a half hour, an hour, whatever you want. And then because it's a practice, it's its own container, you kind of have permission to pay attention to yourself when it's your turn. When it's their turn, you pay attention to them. And you have a chance to notice, oh, wait, what is it that I actually do want? I have no idea. Well, then that's okay. You just wait, it'll pop up eventually. So because it's in the container of a practice, you don't have to take it personally. You can dive in places that you might not have dived in before. You can experiment with things you might not have experimented with before. Um, so, so that's what I encourage as a practice. And what I learned by playing that game with hundreds of clients and students and friends was that it's hard for most of us to ask for what we want. Of course it is. I mean, that's really no surprise because it's inherently vulnerable. It's not vulnerable because there's something wrong with you. It's inherently vulnerable to reveal to someone what you want because now it's out there in the open. You could be laughed at. You could be told no. You could be shamed, or you could be told yes. And then you get it, and then you have all these feelings about, oh, I deserve this, and is this okay, and all the blah 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 that's going to come with it. So it really it can be seen as, I mean, it's a great game to play as a warm up or just just play at any time. It's also can be seen as kind of a self-development spiritual practice because you will learn a lot about yourself when you notice that, oh, we're taking turns, it's my turn, I get to have what I want. Oh shit, now what? So you learn a lot about yourself. Yeah.
Um, something that I see in the medical practice is that I often say, well, what do you want? What are we here to do? And I
Mm-hmm.
get a long list of what people don't want. I don't
Yeah.
want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to feel
Yeah.
that way. I don't
Yeah.
want that anymore.
Yeah.
And this really opened some insight. And as I mentioned before, something that you talk about, which I just find fascinating and sort of, I think maybe part of it's like almost related to sexuality is not for me,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. Um, but this idea that we often try to talk ourselves into liking what we don't like,
Oh, yeah.
wanting what we
Yeah.
don't want.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Help with that, please. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not
Oh
even sure
gosh,
what my
that is so
question is.
true. And
Is
it seems
why
to
do we
be,
do
yeah,
that, or just how do we
yeah,
stop? I'm not.
yeah. That's a really good question. When I played this game with hundreds of people, that's one of the big noticings that came out was that how often we think that we're supposed to like something. I would say, how do you want me to touch you? And what people would answer with was, well, I don't mind if you do X, Y, Z. Well, that's nice, but that's not the question. And so it took some, most people, it took some noticing and practicing to notice, oh, wait, there is something that I want. It might not be what I thought I was supposed to want, but there's something I actually do want. And that's a hard thing for most people. So I pondered this question of why we so often go along with stuff that we don't like or we think we're supposed to like. And I think it comes from this. I think it comes from when we're small, tiny, before we can talk, we are touched in ways that we don't like and we don't want, and we are unable to stop. I'm not talking about abuse. I'm just talking about just ordinary growing up as a small kid. You're going to be touched in ways that you don't want. Even in the best of circumstances, it can't be avoided. So out of that, we learn that, oh, touch, right. That's that thing that just comes out of nowhere and happens to me, and I don't have any choice about it. So I just have to deal with it. And that's our body's experience of being touched. And so we kind of think that's normal. We act as if that's normal. And if we're lucky, as we get older, we get a chance to learn, oh, wait a minute, I do have some choices about some of these things. And many of us never really learn that until much later if we're lucky. So then you grow up and you start having sexual partners, and pretty soon you're rolling around naked on the couch, and somebody's doing something to you that you don't really much like, but eh, you know how to go along with it, so you just go along with it. And when I came to see, after working with a lot of people, how just about universal this was, this tendency to go along with stuff that we don't like, to try to make the best of it, and very often to try to like something that we don't like and think that there's something wrong with us. There must be something wrong with me because he's doing that thing that he saw in the video, and that must be right because they made a video out of it, but it's not doing anything for me. Must be something wrong with me. And oh, honey, there is not a thing wrong with you. Like it's it's an unfortunate aspect of our sexual culture somehow that we learned that, and it seems to be just about universal. Um, so what's the cure? The cure is the 3-minute game that which I just gave you a minute ago. I mean, I'm sure there are other ways to learn it too, but the great thing about the 3-minute game is that it's short. So if something happens that you actually don't like and you haven't learned how to say stop yet, it's not going to last long. It'll be over with, and you can start over. Um, and also that nothing is going to happen except what you ask for. Nothing's going to happen except what you ask for. So you start to learn how to note, you start to notice that, oh, wait, what I want matters? Wow, I never knew that before. And you have a few minutes of it, and then your partner asks for what they want, and you can say yes or no, or, well, I could do it this way, but I can't do it this way. So you learn that you have some limits there, and I'm okay with this, I'm not okay with this. And all those skills develop so that you start to notice, oh, wait, I, I, I could ask for this if oh, wait, I could say no to this, or wow, this is worth a conversation to see what it is that we both want. And so those skills are developed naturally in just the playing of the game. And that's one reason I really, really love it. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so great. It also becomes so clear, like for those of you who haven't read the book yet, one, read it. Two, it's it's really clear why you recommend no genital touch when
Hmm.
playing the game for, what
Yeah.
did you say, at least a decade?
At least for, yeah, I don't know, 20 times or a decade or something, I don't remember. But yeah, give yourself plenty of time because as soon as you start including genital touch, your habits will kick in and you'll forget. Yeah, yeah,
So, Betty, that brings us to, right, like in the game, you recommend limits.
yeah.
And something else, again, I'm going to read a passage from the book because it just struck me so deeply. But you say, I began to see that when we are worried about having to give too much, we become afraid to give anything at all. When we take full responsibility for our limits, we become relaxed and generous within those limits.
Mm-hmm.
It's a it is backwards from what we might think, but the way to joy and generosity is not to push ourselves, but to own our limits. Can you talk to us more about the relationship between limits and sexual desire?
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty endemic for women that we're enculturated to ignore our own desires and our own limits and go along with the program. And guess what? That is going to kill your desire because now you're just kind of doing a bunch of stuff that you weren't really thrilled about to begin with. And you're trying to make yourself like it, and you tried to like it, but it never, like nothing will kill your desire and joy quite like ignoring yourself. And And so when we learn to have limits, which means this is something I'm not willing to do, and we all have those, of course. Um, when this is something I'm not willing to do, and now within those limits, I relax, I'm very generous. Like, oh yeah, that's out of the picture, but all this, yeah, this is in the picture. So that really helps. And I think as we learn to trust ourselves to abide by our limits, then we start to trust that, oh, my limits matter. Oh, my desires matter too. Oh, like there's this thing that I kind of would like, but I am afraid to ask for it. Maybe I'm going to try asking for it, you know. Maybe I can ask for it within the 3-minute game and just get a little sampler. Um, So that's uh, that's how I think that happens. I think the other thing that often happens is that we think there's something we're supposed to want. And this particularly around sexual desire, and this comes back to defining sex. If I think that sex means intercourse, and that's the only thing that counts as sex, and I'm not really thrilled about it because it hasn't been that great to begin with, um, then I don't want sex anymore because it wasn't that fun. Well, in that case, your lack of libido is a good sign. It's a good sign that it wasn't really very fun. So why would you want it anymore? Somebody says, I think it's Schwartz, it says, was the sex you were having worth wanting? Well, it probably wasn't because most people's isn't, it seems, you know. So I think the question that became more clear as I was working with this with people was people were asking the question, why don't I want XYZ? And that is the wrong question. The question to ask is, what is it that I do want? That's a very different question. It may be that what you do want is a nice massage. Maybe what you do want is help with the laundry. Maybe what you want is a foot rub. Maybe you want is to read poetry to each other. Maybe you want is some help with the kids. Maybe what you want is a cuddle. There's something that you want, something. It may not look very sexy, but there's something that you want. That's a very different question than why don't I want XYZ? And it's a problem if you're in a monogamous relationship long term and you tend to think that, well, my partner wants me to want that XYZ. And that's a challenge. I don't have any magic bullets for that.
I'm so glad you
Ex
brought it up because I was thinking
yeah,
what
it's of
happened.
course of course it's hard, especially if that other person thinks that sex only means intercourse, and by golly, we got to fuck every now and then because by golly, that's all there is to it. That's a problem. And my heart goes out to people in that situation. I don't have a magic bullet, but I can say that if you play the 3-minute game as a pair over and over and over and over and over again, you're going to discover that there are lots of fun things to do with each other that don't involve fucking. And that yeah, your repertoire just grows and grows because, oh wow, I never thought of that. Let's do that again. Or wow, that was really wonderful. That foot rub was just what I needed. Um, that Yeah, the question, why don't I want XYZ is the wrong question. The
Yeah,
question needs to be, what is it that I do want? What is it that sounds wonderful right now? Doesn't have to be sexy. What is it that sounds wonderful right now? That's a very different question. And I think that's the route back in. Um, and the other question was what I brought up a little while ago is that, well, if you don't want sex anymore, what was the sex you were having worth wanting? And probably wasn't, at
yeah,
least for you.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I've once heard it posed as like, tell me about the sex that you don't enjoy having.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, that's, really, really telling.
Yeah.
I often
Yeah.
think desire emerges naturally for, a healthy body with a healthy mind in a healthy relationship doing pleasurable things.
Hmm.
So if there's no
Well,
desire,
desire
what's
for what?
missing?
Yeah.
You
Well, that's another way to look at it. Desire for what? And when we, in these kinds of conversations and in a lot of the sort of cultural conversation at large, desire is assumed to mean desire for sex. And sex is assumed to mean intercourse. So if you don't desire intercourse, does that mean you don't have desire? No, it means you desire something different. I mean, we women put this terrible weight on ourselves or accept this terrible weight that's given to us or whatever, which is, oh, I don't have desire. Yes, you do. It's for something else. Like, don't you let him get away with that. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this kind of brings me to another question, which I think is maybe going to take us into a conversation about consent. Um, I find myself wondering, oh gosh, I'm even struggling to articulate the question.
That's going to
But
be a
in
good
a
one.
sense, like, whose job is it? And I'll just preface this by saying, um, I love the book The Female Brain, which talks about how difficult it is for a woman of reproductive age to say the word no because of
Hmm.
the role of estrogen. A conversation I've had with my teenage son is that, if you are an offer to do something and a young girl says, sure, that means no.
That means no. Very good.
And so, there's this idea that it is challenging to ask for what we want. It's challenging to set limits. And so then, when we think we've got consent, how how do we know that we have consent?
Boy, that's a really good one. That's a really good one. When, um, well, unfortunately, we kind of don't because of what you just described. And I've been in situations where I said yes, I didn't really mean it, and I'm sure we probably most of us have. And I've been in situations where I took someone else's yes at their word and they didn't really mean it, and then what. So just to acknowledge that that happens, and you can have the best intention in the world and misread somebody. That happens all the time. So, whose job is it to get it accurately? I don't know. I don't know. One thing that playing the 3-minute game will do is within that kind of strict context, it's the person's, if I'm asking you for what I want, it's your job to be honest about your yes or no. I can't second guess that. But in the real world, it's not so simple. It's more complicated. And I would say that the more skill you develop in honoring your own inner yes and no, the more tuned in you're going to be to respecting the other person's yes or no. And yeah, I think those skills, it's skills that you learn. And um, yeah, I think, I mean, I'm sure there are times when somebody just doesn't give a shit about what you want and they're going to go for it, and that's an ugly situation and unfortunate. And there are many other times when they are trying to be respectful and you don't say no and they don't hear your no. Maybe you don't say yes either, or you just kind of I've been there. So as those skills grow, you'll be in those situations less and less, and you'll be able to be more and more clear on them. But I don't know that I could say whose job it is. It's going to depend on the situation. And I agree with what you're telling your son. Oh, yeah, I guess so. That is not a yes. It's certainly not the kind of yes that you want because you want to have some fun. And that's not that is not going to be any fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Something that seems related that you talk about in the book is like permission to change our minds.
Hmm.
As something
Yeah.
that really touched me, that maybe somebody said, "Oh, I'd love for you to rub my shoulders for 3 minutes." And the first minute was great. And then the second 2 minutes, it was
Hmm.
like I was waiting for it to be done because it
Yeah.
got to be too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just the reminder, or
Yeah.
maybe it's the first time you've ever been told,
Yeah.
you can say
You
no after you've said
absolutely.
yes.
Oh, absolutely. You are allowed to change your mind. And thank God we change our minds because if it, I can, uh, changing your mind means you are relating to reality in the present moment instead of how it was a minute ago or how you thought it was going to be 5 minutes ago. Changing your mind means you're relating to what's happening now. That is a very important skill to have. I'm relating to what's changing in me. Oops, I don't want this anymore. And I'm recognizing that and I'm speaking up. And it's not always easy to speak up when that happens because you just can't. I mean, even if you notice it, you just can't get your mouth to work, you know. And so, again, that's why the 3 minute game is a practice that develops that skill so that in your regular life, then that skill is developed. Yeah, yeah.
Um, we've talked so much about sexuality, sexual play, sexual desire, but you just talked about, in the rest of your life. And I think what's really fascinating about this process is that while we've sort of focused it on like in the intimate spectrum
Hmm, hmm.
around sexuality, these are really skills for living.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Can you
absolutely.
talk about either in your own life or in some of the people you've worked with, how it's shifted
Hmm,
aspects of their life that might occur as utterly unrelated
hmm.
to sexual
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question. Yeah, again, this is one of the values of having a practice. So I'm in the practice and I learn, for example, to trust my no. Because in order to say no, first of all, I have to become aware that I don't want this. And then I have to trust that that information is accurate. And then I have to value it, it has to matter. And then I have to communicate it. So there's a lot going on in there. And so I developed the skill to trust my inner no and to communicate it. And lo and behold, it works. Oh my gosh. I said no. And this person did not get mad at me or punch me out. Like, and they respected my no. Holy cow, it works. And so I have that aha. Then I come back and practice again and again. And then I'm in some other situation at work or something else, and the skill of trusting my no and being able to speak my no, oh, here it is when I need it for, you know, doing something at work or some other situation or telling the kids no or something. Like that skill is immediately transferable. One thing that happens is that as you start to trust your own no, you become kind of automatically more respectful of other people's no. Just kind of it's automatic. And you start to notice, oh, they said yes, but they didn't look like a yes. So you slow down, you check in, you have a little more of a conversation. And um, and so then that skill also transfers out. I noticed this in myself just a few years ago. I live in a local neighborhood community, and I noticed that there was a particular issue that I felt very strongly about. Most issues, I don't care. You can decide. This one issue I felt really strongly about. And I just kind of railroaded it through. And then later, I caught myself and I realized, holy shit, I just kind of railroaded this. And what made me think I had the right to do that? And because I, because my antenna for noticing my no and other people's no is more sensitive than it used to be. Some years ago, I might have done that and not noticed at all. But now I notice, oh shit, I did that. And now, I've got some cleanup to do, you know. But my awareness of those patterns of behavior is more clear so I can see it. Yeah, I won't say that I don't do stupid stuff anymore. I'll just say that I'm learning to be more aware of it.
Well, it's a never-ending practice.
Yeah, yes, it is. Totally. Yeah.
This has been so wonderful. Are there any questions that you wish I had asked because you're just dying to share
Mm,
additionally with this audience?
I think I think I would just reiterate that, particularly since the theme of this is desire, is that why don't I want XYZ is not the right question. The question is, what do I want instead? Or what do I actually want? That's a very different question. And that applies not only to maybe I want a different kind of touch, or maybe I want something besides touch, or, but that there's no such thing as having no desire. It's just that you desire something else. And that is worth noticing. Yeah,
Thank you for
yeah,
that.
yeah.
How can we get more of you?
BettyMartin.org or The Wheel of Consent on YouTube. On my website, there's 7 hours of free video all about how to do this. And of course, there's the book. So BettyMartin.org would be, or wheelofconsent.org is the new one that's going up soon.
Excellent.
Yeah.
My recommendation is to get the book in physical form. I got it in Audible, then I got it in Kindle, and the physical form is the best. And then actually, Betty, my
Then
next,
you can write in the margins.
yes,
Yeah.
to get it spiral bound. Just take
Oh.
it to UPS or wherever, have them cut the binding, spiral bind it, so you can just leave it open.
Oh.
Reference. You just keep coming back and
Oh.
coming back, and it's been really clear from the conversation. You've been such a student of human nature in
Mm,
in this.
mm,
And I'm so grateful for your contribution.
mm.
I'm so
Thank you.
grateful that you had this curiosity and that you've had the courage to follow this curiosity and then to put it into the world. I've been exploring similar topics for a long time. The level of detail in your
Mm,
book is profound
mm,
while being approachable. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
And thank you
Yeah.
for this today.
Yes, you are so welcome. It was nice to talk with you.